Honestly, I don't know what everybody's problem was. I watched the live-action Netflix adaptation of Avatar The Last Airbender, and I thought it was pretty damn good. It was good. I liked it. It's a good show. You know what? I guess I do understand exactly what people's trepidation was about it at first. You know, prior to the show's release, there was a feeling of dread amongst the Avatar contingent, Avatar fan base on at least Twitter. I'm imagining other social media circuits as well. Fear that it wasn't going to be as good as maybe they had initially hoped that it was going to be back when the casting was originally announced. And a lot of what drove up those fears were more tidbits about the production that was coming out from behind the scenes. It started when the original creators of the Avatar series, of the cartoon series, left the production over creative differences. That was the first warning sign that people saw as, oh, maybe this isn't going to be as good as we thought. And then we started hearing about how they wanted to tone down on there was some talk about how they wanted to clamp down on Sokka's misogyny, and they were taking out a lot of that character arc, and people obviously, and I think rightfully so, had a negative reaction to that kind of news because that was a big part. People like Sokka. I do. He's one of my favorites. And a part of that is his arc of starting off the show, being pretty misogynistic and not believing that women could be warriors and all of that. And then through a series of trials and tribulations and experiences that have showed him otherwise, you know, he changes his kind of tune in an organic and not, that's the best part, is it doesn't feel forced. It feels like a natural. There's never really any direct part where there's no direct moment where he like looks at the camera and is like, I used to think that women sucked, but now I think they're awesome. You know, it's not as blunt and direct as that. It's definitely like a vibes kind of thing where the vibes of this character have very obviously changed over the course of these past few episodes that tell us that his prior worldview on women in war as warriors and in combat has changed because of, you know, his experiences, which is a cool feeling. It's a cool vibe. It ingratiates you to a character a lot more. And when word came out that they were taking at least, or as I guess they said, they were toning down the misogyny aspects, people thought that that was like a death knell for Sokka's character, you know, and I understand that vibe. And you know, there were other things that came out too that, you know, didn't really sit well with people. And I think leading up to the release, people had already begun to write the show off as an abject failure. Prior to the release, though, I've seen things here and there, kind of a mixed-ish response. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 60% tomato meter from critics and a 75% from audience, which is about what I would expect, to be perfectly honest. I think maybe I would put it a little bit higher, in my view. I liked it a good deal. I actually thought that it adhered pretty closely to the vibe of the cartoon more than I was expecting it to. The other thing that they had talked about prior to the launch was how they wanted to kind of tailor it to more of a Game of Thrones contingent, which didn't make any sense, and people obviously responded negatively to that too. But I didn't get the vibes watching the show. I didn't get any Game of Thrones vibe. I don't know what the fuck they were talking about when they mentioned that. Now, obviously, when you're taking a cartoon of 60 episodes or something, and you're compressing it down into, 8 per season, I guess they're going to do 2 or 3 seasons, but 3 seasons I think have already been, or 2 additional seasons have already been greenlit. So 3 seasons total. You're gonna have to repace it. And I think that, you know, some of the other issues that people had with the changes that were made were a function of having to reconfigure the pacing for a television show, a live action show. So like all of Aang's side quests and whatnot, people are mad that they were stripped from the show. But I think that the anger there is misdirected. There's a different anger. I have a different anger about that. That doesn't fall on the heads of the writers or producers, and I'll mention that a little later. But as far as what I felt watching the show from start to finish, I thought that it was paced pretty well. I thought that they hit on the general vibe of the cartoon. It wasn't as silly, obviously, as the cartoon is, because there's some silliness that you can get away with in a cartoon that you can't get away with in live action. I feel, and a part of that is Uncle Iroh's character, even though Uncle Iroh and the actor that portrays him, I forget his name, but he was the patriarch of Kim's Convenience. He's probably the best person on the show. And I don't mean to say that as in like, oh, all the other actors are mid or whatever. Like, everyone's great. Like, they're all cast awesomely. I think he is just that much better than everybody else. And he it was always great to watch. And he definitely has strong Uncle Iroh vibes, even though, again, his character isn't as wacky or as jolly as Uncle Iroh is in the animation. I think some people would probably have a problem with that, but I think it works. I think what they've done with him, I think it fits. Everybody else is just is great. Zuko's great. Aang and Katara and Sokka are great. Like they're all great. I like all the casting. The story is pretty well paced. I like that they ended it with the assault on the Northern Water Tribe. You get a lot of really good stuff there, visually and story wise. They hit on all the main big beats that I would expect them to hit on. I think the Boomy stuff was probably a little weak. I mean, they got the main point across with the Boomy character. They got the main point across, and I think that's fine. But like, they kind of mashed up a couple of stories into one in that particular moment. They took the story of the inventor who created the air balloon thing and like the bombs and whatnot, and they mashed it up with everything that was going on with Boomy and that city with the roller coaster things on it. And I think it works fine. Like, I don't have a problem with them mashing that up and like trying to compress the story a little bit, because again, pacing. But obviously it would have been better if they could have let the world breathe a little bit more, if they could have allowed for more space for adventure to this part of the world, and then having the stuff with Boomy, and then adventure to that part of the world, and then having the stuff with the inventor and all of that. Abed from Community plays that guy, by the way, and he did a great job. Awesome job. I was happy to see him pop up in there. I think all of the bending looked fantastic. I was really happy with how that ended up looking in the final. I think the water, if I was gonna have a complaint, I think the water bending was kind of a little flaccid looking. Like, it was kind of hard for me to buy that water bending was an effective mechanism for like attacking someone, because whenever Katara or anyone else did like a little thing and like the water swirled and then splashed on someone, it always looked like the weight of the water and the physics of the impact always made it look like it was more of an annoyance than it was like a weapon. Like, it was just like splashing someone with like, it almost looked like they took some water and scooped it up in their hands and then just splashed it in someone's face. And it was just like, oh. But like, the actors would have to sell like, oh, they just got water whipped, and they would fly and their feet would be in the air. They'd land on their backs. They'd be knocked out and shit. But it just never visually had that kind of an impact. It didn't have that kind of a weight. So it always seemed weird to me. Like, that water just doesn't look like it's whipping. It doesn't look like it hurts. And there was just something about that. I don't know if it was just a function of them wanting to make the water look like water, because it's a give and take. Like, you could make it look like water and it's all bubbly and flowy and whatnot, but then that doesn't look like it has weight or impact. And you could make water look like it has weight and impact when it smacks someone, but then it probably doesn't look like convincing water, if that makes sense. I don't know how you balance those two things out. I'm not a VFX artist, so I can't really answer that question. All I know is from all the footage I've seen from the civil rights era, you can make water look like it hurts when it hits you. Although I don't know if they wanted to go that route. Regardless, that would probably be my only complaint about the VFX of the bending, is that the water just kind of looked like it didn't have the weight and impact and power that I would want it to have. But the earth bending looked cool. Fire bending obviously looked cool. The air bending was great. The Avatar state was threatening when Kyoshi possessed Aang's body. But when he was the beast in the water tribe, though, the VFX on that one kind of looked a little CWE. I wasn't super vibing on that, but outside from those core complaints, I think everything else looked really good, and it all looked cool. The action looked fun. It looked exciting. I liked the mask episode. I think that looked really cool. That was really well done and shockingly faithful to the animation. That's the thing. I think a lot of it, so much of it, was very faithful to the actual animation. And like, again, I didn't watch Avatar during its original run. I didn't watch Avatar until 2021, at the tail end of the pandemic, when the person I was quarantining with started going back to work, and I was hanging out at the house by myself with a couple of weenie dogs. And I was like, well, you know what? I ran out of things to watch. I may as well watch this Avatar cartoon and see what all the hubbub was about, way back when. And so, like, 2021, I'm sitting here binge watching all the Avatar cartoons, just my jaw on the floor, like, why didn't anyone ever tell me that this show was so awesome? And then people would be like, dude, we tried to tell you all the time. You just didn't watch it until now. So I guess I have a lot more recency bias, I suppose, as far as the cartoon is concerned. But I think that also helps me. I don't have the same nostalgia lens that I think a lot of the old school fans of Avatar have when they think about their feelings watching Avatar when they were kids or whatever, versus the live action show now. My feelings of watching Avatar is just from a couple years ago, and then I'm watching this now, and I'm getting the same vibes. Like, I feel like it's a very faithful adaptation. I think it's really well done. I think the pacing for what they were doing, for the stories they were trying to compress into these 8 episodes, I think it was paced probably about as well as you would like for it to be paced. I think all of the characters were given enough screen time to have their motivations manifest in a natural manner. With Sokka and his wanting to be prove himself as a warrior, and then realizing that his strengths may lie elsewhere, and that's okay. It's okay for that to be the case. For him to not rely solely on himself as a leader, because his father was a leader. Like, all these kinds of things for him, and Katara wanting to be a warrior, and her duel against that water tribe guy was pretty well done. I liked watching that. Again, water bending aesthetic aside, I thought that was really well done. And her character had some pretty good moments too. And obviously Aang, and with Aang, the chief complaint about his character in the live action is that he doesn't seem as much of a carefree kid as he did in the cartoon. And that's true, and I understand that as a legit criticism. It's important to understand that Aang is a child still, and he still has the desire of a child to just kind of play and explore and grow up as a kid. And the more that he runs from his duties and responsibilities as an avatar, the more that the weight of the consequences of that running away starts to weigh on him. And you don't quite get that vibe in the show, because he doesn't ever really do any kind of running away or abdicating of responsibilities. Like, he's pretty devoted to being the avatar from day one in the show. And that is a character change. It does kind of hinder your understanding of who Aang is as a character a little bit. Just a little bit. They do a good job of introducing the idea of Aang not taking his studies seriously. Like, you understand in the cartoon he doesn't take his studies seriously because he's a kid and he's trying to have fun and wants to explore. But you don't have the kid trying to have fun and wanting to explore in this. So he doesn't take his studies seriously because why? It's kind of like hung out in the air when he's talking to the water tribe guys who are like, the Avatar is here, he can help us, and he's like, well, actually, guys, and he's like, wait, can't you bend? You're a bender of all elements, and he's like, well, I don't know how to bend in the other elements that well. I need a trainer, and then they're obviously visibly let down by that, but in the show, it's, obviously in the cartoon, it's, he's a kid, and, abdication of responsibilities, and, now there's a price to pay for that. But in the show, you don't really quite understand that part of it. It just seems like it sucks that, this kid is being relied upon, and he's been in ice for the past however many years, 100 years. So he's got a lot of catching up to do. And he clearly wants to catch up in the show. That's why he goes to the water. He's devoted to going to the water tribe. Whereas in the cartoon, obviously, he's deviating. He's going on all these other little side quests before he gets to the water tribe, which Bill plays into that character arc a little bit more. But yeah, without that aspect, the character kind of seems like his trajectory is very straightforward, and it makes his character feel... it's kind of weird to say it, but it makes his character feel a little less important. It's like, it's kind of ironic, he is the Avatar, but it turns his character into an avatar for the side characters. You're much more invested in Zuko. You're much more invested in Sokka. You're much more invested in Katara, and Aang is just an avatar for their character arcs and developments rather than his own, because like his own is kind of given a little bit of a short shrift because, they're trying to pace all of these episodes and all of these epic world events into these 8 episodes, and they can't really find the time to go on the kinds of junkets you need to go on in order for Aang to have his moments, his character growth moments. That's not to say he doesn't have any. He still gets there. He gets there. I mean, Boomy, the whole conversation with Boomy and like the fight and all of that, that's a big part of his development. And there are moments, but I will say, as far as negative criticism for the show, that's probably as negative as I'm going to give it. Ultimately, I thought it was great. I thought a lot about the live action One Piece when I was thinking about how I received this show. And honestly, I like Avatar more than the live action One Piece, primarily because it does a better job of pacing than One Piece does. And that is a function of live action One Piece trying to cram too much into 8 episodes. And it really suffers from some much needed character development and I think I don't know if I've ever talked about my opinions on One Piece live action after having watched it, but my big problem with that show, and I do like live action One Piece, I think it's good, but it does too much. Like when you get to Syrup Village, like my chief complaint is why would they ever want Usopp to join the crew? I understand it in the anime. It makes perfect sense watching the anime, where you have all of these episodes where the nucleus of the Straw Hats, before they're actually called the Straw Hats, are on Syrup Island, and they're trying to find a shipmaker, and they get introduced to Usopp, who introduces them to Kaya. But then there's all this other stuff that's going on with Captain Kuro, and Luffy ends up getting hypnotized, and he falls off the cliff, and they think he's dead after overhearing Kuro's plan to usurp Kaya's fortune and then kill her and all of that. And then Usopp, there's that scene at the beach after they revive Luffy and they realize he's not dead, he was just sleeping, where Zoro and Luffy are talking to Usopp, And Usopp is determined. Like, it doesn't matter if he's going to get his ass kicked by 100, veteran pirates or whatever. And it doesn't matter if the rest of the Syrup Village ever believes him, because he's been the boy crying wolf for far too long. He's not going to rely on them, believing him all of a sudden. He's going to do whatever he can to stop Kuro from harming Kaya. And Zoro says he's honorable. Zoro's like, we'll fight with you. And Usopp is like, what? Why? He's like, you're an honorable person. And, we've got your back and blah, blah, blah. And then, so from there, they're already on board with Usopp because they see what kind of character he actually is. Never mind the cowardice and all of that. They see deep down inside what kind of a person Usopp actually is. He's a courageous person who will always put it on the line for his friends and people he cares about, which is like the core mission statement, that core ideology behind the Straw Hat Pirates. And then later on in that arc, when they're actually fighting the pirates, they see it in practice. He's getting the shit beat out of him by Kuro and whatnot, and he's still selflessly, trying to get Kaya to safety and instructing his little kid friends to see her to safety and all of that. Like, he does it. He talks the talk and then he walks it. And that's why at the end of the Syrup Village arc, when Usopp is like, you know what, I need to become a pirate of my own. I have to go on my own adventure. Zoro is like, just get in the boat already, because they know what kind of person he is. And he's exactly the kind of person that they want on their crew. You don't get that from Usopp in the live action show. I'm not trashing any of the actors. Like, I think One Piece is as perfectly cast as Avatar is in every respect. But you just don't get that character arc with Usopp in the show. You don't get any kind of sense that he's the kind of person that would lay his life on the line for his friends and whatnot, or that he's the selflessness that he expressed when he told the other kids, never tell the village about the pirate attack that we thwarted. They don't need to know about it. They don't need to worry about it. It's perfectly fine. That very selfless act there, like, you don't get any of that stuff. The whole Zoro telling Usopp that they'll fight for him because he's honorable and all of that, like, you just don't get any of that shit. So at the end of that episode, when Zoro's like, get on the boat, it's like, why would they ever want this guy to get on the boat? It doesn't make any sense. Like, I mean, sure, he was helpful here and there, but that whole Syrup Village arc was just so compressed into just, like, I guess maybe an episode and a half, but even still, like, it was just not enough to really flesh out the character dynamics between Usopp and, the village and the Usopp pirates and Kaya, and how all of that show Luffy and Zoro what his character is and why they want this dude. Same thing with Sanji, to a little bit of a lesser degree, but pretty much the same. In the anime, it was all about Sanji not just feeding it wasn't enough for him to feed a hungry pirate. It was also, and primarily, him willing to put his life on the line fighting that dude that was dressed like, I don't know what that guy was dressed like. He had like a disc with like little ball hands or something, and he like exploded. It was weird, but Sanji was willing to put his life on the line to protect the restaurant, because the restaurant was the old man's dream, and that was enough for him. And Luffy, even though Luffy, scalded Sanji for being careless with his life like that, he saw in him the same thing he saw in Zoro or in Usopp. Like, this is a guy whose the nucleus of his very being is what we are as Straw Hats. This is what we do. Like, we are willing to put it all on the line for our friends and our loved ones, fighting for our dream. It's always about a dream. When they put their feet on the barrel and express their dream, King of the Pirates, or, make a map of the world, or, greatest swordsman, or brave warrior of the sea. It's all about dreams, finding the East or the All Blue, finding the All Blue. It's all about dreams, and it's not just enough to have a dream. It's about putting your life on the line for your dream and for others. And you don't get that in the One Piece live action because it's just so ultra compressed. And this brings me to to where I think the true source of the anger should be directed, not at the writers or producers, but it should be directed at Netflix and other streaming services, because this is something I've noticed. It's shrinkflation. It's shrinkflation in our media properties, whereas shrinkflation in a bag of potato chips, like Joe Brandon always talks about, is like, you ever notice how you get a bag of potato chips and you open it and it's fewer chips? It's the same bag, but it's fewer chips. That's shrinkflation. We're going to put a stop to that. It's the same idea with Netflix and shit. Like, used to be a day and age when a season of television was fucking 26 some odd episodes. How many episodes is in season 2 of Star Trek The Next Generation? Let me look that up. 22 episodes. 22 episodes in season 2 of Star Trek The Next Generation. And each one is about an hour long, so it's not like it's 22 15-minute episodes. There's 22 1-hour-long episodes in season 2 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. But as at the advent of streaming and premium television, it reduced gradually throughout the years to 13 episodes. The Netflix Marvel shows had 13 episodes. And then, we started getting, and they would charge you what? How much was Netflix back then? It was like $7.99 a month, maybe $8.99 a month. But then they shrunk down to 10 episodes a season, and the price went up to $12.99 a month. And then it shrunk down to now 8 episodes a season. And fucking Netflix is like almost $20 a month at this point. You get 8 episodes a season, and it's $20 a month, compared to it used to be 13 episodes a season at $7 a month. And it used to be fucking 22. It used to be 22 episodes a season, and you'd watch it for free on TV. But and in some instances, like True Detective Night Country or like some of the Disney Plus shows, Echo and whatnot, you get 6 episodes. Obi-Wan, I think, was 6 episodes. You get 6 episodes a season for fucking $20 a month or whatever you're paying now. So it's shrinkflation for our media as well, and it's a real problem when it comes to shit like One Piece or Avatar, because imagine how much more they could have done with respects to character development and pacing and all of that if they had maybe not 22 episodes. I'm willing to split the difference a little bit, but what if they had 13 episodes instead of 8? What if True Detective Night Country had 10 episodes instead of 6? Right? Like, I think even the first season of True Detective had 8 episodes. So, like, this dramatic shrinking down of the content that they're giving us while inflating the price on our end, it's not serving the art very well. It's not serving the art very well at all. It's only serving fucking the bottom line of the production studios. Although I guess I will say, to their credit, like, I don't know what the budget is of Avatar. I know live action One Piece was like 18 something crazy, like 18 million per episode or whatever. M. Night Shyamalan Avatar film had the equivalent of a $212 million budget in today's dollars, and that's for 1 hour and 45 minutes of story. Netflix allocated $120 million for nearly 8 hours of story. So it was $120 million total. A little less than, I guess, is that right? I guess 15 million an episode, which is a little less than One Piece. I think One Piece was 18 million an episode. So I guess, 120 million or 15 million an episode. That's not bad. That's good. That's blockbuster budgeting for a television show. So I'll give them their due there. They at least they're willing to spend the money, on these blockbuster efforts that, are only 8 episodes or 6 episodes in some respects. I have to imagine, especially considering, and I guess I'll talk about this next, especially considering that something like Godzilla -1 was able to be a visual fucking tour de force that looked amazing, incredible. And not just me saying this, it was amazing enough to win an Oscar. What is the actual category? Like best visual effects? They were able to win an Oscar for best visual effects for Godzilla -1 for a movie that was ostensibly shot with a budget of approximately $15 million. They're not willing to tell you exactly what the budget is, although they do say it's sub 15 million, and they're not really super interested in giving you the process of how they were able to make it look the way that it did. It won an Oscar, so it's not just me that's blown away by the visuals of that movie. But like, considering that they were able to do that for 15 million, I have to imagine that you could take 120 million across a season of television and get some pretty solid results with with um, with respects to both giving your script some breath for pacing, but also not really skipping on the visual quality if you know how to do it the right way. I don't necessarily believe that a bigger budget makes a better product. Obviously, I think Godzilla minus one is perfect proof of the contrary to that. But I think if you are going to have like a blockbuster budget like that, find a way to spread it around in a sense where you don't sacrifice the quality, but the quality of the visuals, but you also don't sacrifice the quality of your storytelling, because that's what I'm seeing with both Avatar and One Piece, is that the quality of the storytelling is sacrificed for maybe the visuals of it. And I don't know if there's a mandate or anything like that from Netflix saying that you can't have more than 8 episodes in a season anymore. I don't know. I don't know the details around that. But I think that it's a disservice to us as consumers, because we pay those prices when they hike their prices up. And Netflix is talking about doing another price hike, even though they just hiked prices last November. You know, they're making us pay more money, but then they're giving us less TV show as a response. So, you know, whenever I do have whenever I do have a little bit of smoke for these shows, with respects to pacing, it's directed towards Netflix and not necessarily the writers or producers. So it's my 2 cents on that. I've been talking about that for a while. I think you could see the sun set in real time as I was speaking, which is why all of a sudden everything is a little bit darker and a little bit bluer. But you know, that's basically my vibes on live action Avatar and One Piece. One Piece snuck in there, so there you go.